Welcome to Bipolar and Surviving. This is a blog and now a podcast of stories about living with bipolar disorder and surviving. Whether you suffer from mental illness, know someone with it, or are otherwise affected by it, this site offers real stories of hope and survival. As always, feel free to check out our website at www.bipolarandsurviving.com. We are also available on Facebook and Twitter. Feel free to give this episode a rating if you happen to like it, and also to share it on social media. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy. Hello, and welcome back to the Bipolar and Surviving podcast. I know we dove right into the first topic with the first episode. I didn't give much explanation as to what the podcast is and all of that, but I just wanted to give a quick overview. The podcast is another component of the website Bipolar and Surviving, which is primarily a blog. We also have a Facebook page and a Twitter account. I encourage you to follow us there. On Facebook, we're under Bipolar and Surviving, and on Twitter, it's at Bipolar Survivor. I couldn't get the Bipolar and Surviving handle on Twitter. It was already taken. And so this podcast is it's something that I'm really enjoying doing. I am a musician by trade. I work in student finance during the day as a bursar. But I love working with audio and music, and you'll hear at the beginning of each podcast episode and at the closing of each podcast episode is just a few chords that I'm strumming on guitar just to add some music. So I'm really looking forward to continuing this podcast series, and I hope you'll enjoy listening and commenting, sharing, giving ratings on iTunes. That all works very well with helping spreading the audience. Because the ultimate goal of this podcast is to ensure that the stories of bipolar and mental illness survivors and those who continue to suffer and those who are affected by it, those who care for people with mental illness, to ensure that everybody has their story told and that everybody kind of gets something out of this. So with that, I'd like to dive right into the second topic for the second episode. What does self-care look like, my experience? So self-care is something that I'm working on. It's my biggest flaw as a person and as a person with mental illness. So I am terrible at taking care of myself. What I generally do is I give my whole self to others, whether it is to work or whether it is to my family or my friends or things like that. So I tend to give my all to other people and not take anything for myself. My therapist has been continuously stressing that this is not a zero-sum game. So in other words, if you are taking care of yourself, you are not necessarily taking away from other people. In fact, by taking care of yourself, you are helping other people, the people that you would normally help. So this is a key component for me of my recovery and my going forward as a person and as a person who has mental illness. So let's dive in. So I've always wondered what self-care exactly looks like. So the first topic I want to cover is loving yourself. So what does loving yourself mean? Do we have a definition? I hear about it on all these podcasts and I read about it on all these blogs and these websites, and nobody kind of enumerates exactly what loving yourself is. So what I've been trying to do in my personal life is to make sure that I define loving yourself as a specific thing, and I'm slowly getting there. So what I've been kind of doing is piecemealing it together. So at first my goal was to love myself, and then I broke that down into something simpler, which was to trust myself. And now I've broken down the trusting myself into various other components. So one thing that I'm doing is slowly assembling this terminology and this list of things that is loving yourself. So I don't have quite a definition at this time because it's such a nebulous thing. I mean, who can define what love is in the beginning, so you know what love is, but can you really define it? Can you really define the feeling of it? Therefore, can you really define what loving yourself is? So that's kind of where I stand on loving yourself. I don't quite know the definition. I have an idea of what it means, but right now I'm compiling a bunch of things that contribute towards loving yourself. After all, it's something that we don't necessarily know until we actually do it. So I encourage you to love yourself and work towards that, which is what I'm doing. I'm working towards it. But until then, I need to find a more concrete way of doing that. With that said, there is such a thing as self-care. And I'd like to kind of parse this out into self-care versus self-indulgence. So self-care is taking care of yourself, as you know. So self-care is making sure that you are running at optimal you-ness, so to speak. What I like to differentiate this from is the concept of self-indulgence. So a lot of people on these blogs and podcasts, they'll say, oh, go to a spa and, eat the right food, eat some great food, do the things that you love, things like that. And that's great. That's self-care, but it's also self-indulgence. And self-care is much more than self-indulgence. That's just a component of self-care, is self-indulgence. So self-care for me is also making sure that I get enough sleep. I mean, that's the key thing for me is I have to make sure I get enough sleep. I also have to make sure that I take care of my body. What that means for me is to eat lots of fruits and veggies, which I love, but also sometimes I slack off on eating. I also need to floss my teeth. Nothing makes me feel more refreshed than flossing my teeth at night and brushing my teeth and using some Listerine. It just makes me feel like $1,000,000 before I go to bed, and that helps me sleep better. Another thing that I do to take care of myself is I like to make sure I scrub in the shower. That makes me feel clean and good. And it's not necessarily self-indulgence. I'm not going to a spa. I'm not soaking in essential oils, or I've never been to a spa, so I don't know what that means. But so self-care for me also means getting exercise. So I've been rollerblading more. I got new wheels for my rollerblades. I got new bearings for my rollerblades. Got new axles, and my rollerblades fly like $1,000,000. I actually got above 27 miles an hour on one of my downhills yesterday. So I'm very stoked about that, especially since it's been a pretty cold past couple of days. I'm in New England, and it's early October, so it's finally getting a little cold. So self-care for me also means investing in the things that I enjoy, such as music. So right now my wife has the baby. She's off at a baby shower for a family member. Excuse me. And so she is taking the baby, and I'm using this opportunity to work with some audio, do some podcasting, do some music making, and just enjoy myself in the things that I love and the things that I was trained to do, which is music and audio and things like that. So that's how I self-care for myself, so to speak. And self-indulgence is something that I do as well. So I love going to Rita's and getting Italian ice and custard. That's like having an impromptu visit to the ice cream shop. That's always fun. I also like playing my guitar very loud. Well, that kind of goes with self-care, but that's a little bit indulgent. I like getting sushi. That's one of my favorite foods. So I enjoy that as well. I like getting those San Pellegrino, like sparkling, really sugary, fruity drinks. So as you can see, most of my self-indulgence revolves around food, but that's how I roll. So that's how I self-care for myself. One thing I forgot to mention that is self-care is meditation and mindfulness training. So that not only helps my life get better, but it helps me become a better version of who I am. So with that said, I'd like to move on to the third and final component of this episode, which is treating others with care, but not doing the same with yourself. So I think you should be able to say, I love you to other people who you care about, but also with that same amount of love and compassion, say that to yourself. And I am such a hypocrite in saying that because I am terrible at doing that for myself. So that's what I vow to do. I've said it on this podcast now, so I have to commit to doing it. It's in the public now. I have to be able to tell myself, I love you. It's such a strange thing to me, but it's such a radical shift in how I am and how I operate. So I encourage you to treat yourself with the same care that you would your best friend or your most close family member or your pet if you love your pet, if you have a pet. Just to treat yourself like you would treat others. So not do unto others as you would do to you, but if you're having trouble self-caring, do unto yourself as you would do unto others. So that's a key shift for me, is understanding that I treat other people with care. As I said before, I will give my last energy, my last dime, my last breath, my last instant of time to other people. And I have to shift that to saying, yes, I will care for other people, but I need to care for myself. As my therapist said, and I said that before in the podcast, is it's not a zero-sum game. So what that means is that by, treating myself well, I'm not treating other people badly. In fact, by treating myself well, I'm enabling myself to treat other people even better. And treating others with care but not doing the same with yourself is a dangerous thing. It can lead to depression and anxiety. It can also lead to resentment. So if you're always, helping other people but not helping yourself, you may grow resentful of those other people. So that's key, is to make sure that you are treating others with care and doing the same with yourself. So self-care is a huge topic. So that's why I just wanted to touch on these 3 type of topics, and I'll definitely cover more of these in a future episode. So the 3 topics are loving yourself. What does that mean? Is there a definition? Is there some way we can nail down exactly what loving yourself means? For me, it seems like I can, again, nail down specific things like actions that I can take, but in the end, it's something I experience, not something I define. The second topic was self-care versus self-indulgence, making sure that you do indulge yourself, but also making sure that caring for yourself, the flossing your teeth, that waking up at a good hour every day, that makes sure that you care for yourself. So self-care is important. The third and final topic I discussed was treating others with care, but not doing the same with yourself. So that's that double standard that we tend to have in today's society, or at least for those people who, who are like me, who like to give their all to other people and find their satisfaction and their value in life in helping others. So again, more in a future episode. I look forward to recording another podcast episode. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. As I said, the first episode just dove right in. So I gave you a brief overview of the podcast, and I hope you will continue to follow the podcast and let me know what you think. Thank you so much. Have a great day.